Hello, my name is Tormo Scherer and I will talk to you today about policy planning. For today, we have as a learning objective to get an understanding of what do we try to achieve with energy policy and how is the policy formed by explaining the steps of the policy design cycle. All policy regarding the energy sector try to make the sector better. This can be done in multiple ways, like a better availability of energy. When we talk about availability, we usually mention the term security of supply, which can be on the long term, like in the EU, where increasing renewable energies pose a challenge with the long-term security of supply, as they are weather dependent. There's also the short-term aspect, which is more an active topic in developing countries, like in Africa. Short-term security of supply aims to provide continuous energy supply 24/7. Policies regarding improvements of infrastructure are a good example of trying to promote the availability or reliability of energy. Affordability is another important policy objective. As energy prices increase, the cost of living increases as you have to pay more for the same amount of energy. As most appliances rely on energy nowadays, and this will only increase, high prices would prevent certain consumers from using it and would hinder with the economy when these costs are too high. Therefore, policy for efficient prices or reasonable profits for firms exists. At last, the sustainability of the policy must be clear. With this, we mean that the impact should be reasonable on an environment but also on a social level. For example, the fact of burning fossil fuels has a negative impact on our environment as CO2 emissions promote climate change. And a social example is the feeling of safety when you live close to a nuclear plant. This plant is not accepted to be placed everywhere. For policy to be created, a problem or inefficiency must be observed. In many ways, the need for intervention can be made visible. To combat climate change and step away from depleting fossil fuels, which have a finite supply, we move to a more renewable or decarbonized energy system. So, a transition must take place. This transition is not realized with only one change. Many actors and systems have to change for this to happen. The help of scientific developments can increase the pace of this transition. Think about the invention of more efficient solar panels, which increase the value for society. But also international or European attention to the influence of the media or protest can help to create awareness and be able to put problems on the agenda of policymakers. The next step is to formulate policy. Policy formulation is often a rather complex task. You have to take into account many aspects when trying to improve the system. Is the new policy in line with the old ones, or do they need to be changed? Is something feasible, or are there certain constraints depending on the country? Do you have to take into account path dependency, as aspects of the past influence how you can formulate solutions or tackle problems? If your country is dependent on nuclear energy for a large portion of its energy supply, a nuclear phase-out might not be reasonable in a short period of time. Aside from this, also certain political agendas influence policy formulation, and this can happen on a global, regional and national scale. This makes the task for the European Commission sometimes really hard, as they want to create policy for supplying sustainable, affordable and secure energy. But due to all the different wishes and constraints of the many countries, a general applicable law can be quite vague. This is then also a problem when policies are adopted by countries. European legislation has to be directly adopted or implemented in a country. But European directives are rather a goal towards which a country has to work. And this can be adopted towards country-specific conditions. The same policy can be implemented in different ways across Europe. This is the case, for example, with the liberalization of the energy market in Europe. The Liberalization Directive mandates countries to separate the network functionality, but it was left for each country to choose how to do it. For example, it was done in some countries through privatization of the network operator, whereas in other countries, privatization was politically unacceptable and hence the policy was implemented differently. Another option is that policy is signed by a country but put down as a commitment rather than a law. This is the case with the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement. Countries try to achieve the goals of the agreement, but there is no legal repercussion if they fail the objective. This is of course also dependent on the kind of agreement. But how do we go to this policy goal? If something is adopted, it has to be transferred into specific plans and projects. The manifestation of the projects takes sometimes years to complete, as switching from equipment or building infrastructure can be time-consuming. After implementation, you have to look back if the intended goal is actually met. Therefore, evaluation is needed. Often, public organizations like the European Commission and more national institutions check if a policy is implemented enough and if the required change is met. When this is not the case, a warning can be given and possibly even a penalty or fine can be given when this warning is not adhered to. Also, private institutions and the media can play a role in the evaluation of policy. For example, anyone has the right to sue the government if certain policies undermine other policies or if a government is not doing enough to achieve a policy. So, after the evaluation of the process starts over, a possible next step has to be taken or if the policy needs to be adjusted after a certain amount of years. It can also be the case that aspects are missed when formulating the policy or interaction effects arose when it was not expected. Think of unforeseen damages or cost for actors, surrounding municipalities, etc. Therefore, this process is also called the policy design cycle, as it's often a continuous loop of improvements to create a policy which interacts with the overall system. Therefore, even when a policy is implemented accordingly, it still has to be taken into account for creating new policies.